Here's a real simple image, but it's an image that has a very clear matrix, that you have the dark of her upper body going into the the light of her upper body going to the dark surround, and then the medium to dark value of her legs in shadow, the chair and the shadow going over light. So it's light over dark and dark over light, and it just reverses. Okay? So that's a pretty simple kind of a design. Here's one of Steve's drawings, or his paintings. And you can see that there's the light on the wall on the left that's hitting the wall. If you can see, those are radiating lines. The top one's thicker, and then it's smaller and smaller. And those work to be, again, create closure, what we'll call closure. And it creates a directional force that brings you up to the boxer on the left, okay? Or brings you down around and dives you down into the darkness down below. So that is complemented by the yellow stripe on the right-hand boxer's pants. You can see that that's kind of a continuum that follows around and frames that. Okay? There's a lot of beautiful articulation on his forearm that goes back to his upper arm that overlaps his shoulder and rib cage. So there's this dimensional push that goes back farther in space, or his arm coming forward and forward. And then even that is complemented by the boxer on the right's deltoid muscle, the darkness of that. It also continues to move downward and almost aligns with the line on his pants. You see that? So these types of directional things, he's using the anatomy, he's using the material or the stripe on the pattern, and he's using the light shape on the wall, and they're all complementing one another because they're all driving your eye through that picture. So look for those types of things in the world and try to break those things down. I think this is a Mead Schaefer image, and again, take a look at the local values. There's just a small number of local values. The greatest contrast is on this wall, okay? And all these characters are silhouetted within this little corridor, right? What do you think is going on in this? What do you think the story is here? They're hiding, okay? They're completely in the shadows, but they're very wary. The guy with a hat in the back is looking back, possibly out towards where they were, looking out that way, part of the alley, and the woman is very wary, looking forward out the other side of the alley. And the guy in the middle isn't doing so well, is he? Could be something up with that guy. The other thing is there's a threat involved because another prominent element in there is his sword too. He doesn't have it drawn, but he certainly has his hand on it, and it silhouettes really clearly. Okay. He made sure that it's silhouetted clearly. If you take a look at the guy in the back who's looking over his shoulder, take a look at his shoulder underneath his shoulder underneath his face. It starts to tip down and then aligns with the man who's slumping, his light shirt on his sleeve, and it continues down towards the darkness between the woman's white sleeves. Okay, so there's a movement that starts there and wraps down and around. Okay, he's kept the light on the wall on the right. He's kept that light closed in because on the lower right of the frame you can see that there's still a darkness in there. It's like there's only a little bit of light. It doesn't cast all the way through. Okay, then because it's so limited in values, he's pushed the saturation. There's another element of tension, how he's created tension in this. Look at the buildings in the back. There's lower contrast in the buildings in the back than there is. You see, he's grouped the values in the back much closer. But what he's done, he's given you greater saturation in those colors in the back, in those blues. There's more saturation in those blues. And what ends up happening is saturation is one of our visual components that tends to come forward. Now, when the background comes forward and the foreground goes backwards, you get a visual tension, okay? That visual tension isn't necessarily wrong all the time. There's a lot of people say, avoid tension, always make harmonious images. But if your image message is that there is tension going on here, wouldn't you use it as a tool? And that's what he's done here. He's used it as a tool. The passing of Robin Hood, this is N.C. Wyeth image, and you can see that Robin Hood is the featured character in this situation. The other guys are hiding in the shadows, basically. They're obscuring their faces because they aren't important as him. So he's kind of separating them and creating this extremely contrasting pattern. The guy on the right standing up, you can see his shadow also aims down towards Robin Hood. He's just creating these areas of focus, keeping his eye line, Robin Hood's eye line, the strong element. He's even put a cross on the wall. If you look at the extreme right, middle of the frame, or in the middle of the vertical right line, there's a little cross on the wall. And that little vertical rides along the surface, or rides along the edge, but it keeps you from going out the edge. It could, this wall on the right could be very flat. Okay, it could flatten out in a hurry, but he puts this little slice of perspective and puts this little line in there to stop your eye from just slamming against the edge of the frame. So even though it's parallel and close to the frame, it softens that edge a little bit. Rockwell was really great at telling stories and using the pose, the composition, of all of this to really tell the story. Breaking Home Ties is about, a young boy going off to college, and, the dog's going to miss him for sure, right? And his father is quiet, and he's gonna need him around there, around the farm, but he knows it's the right thing. He's going to let him go. And you can see things aren't in great shape at home because there's the broken running board. There's little elements there, and if the boy had a little pocket watch like the dad, something in his pocket there, he'd probably be looking at it, but he's looking off down the road out into the future, and his father's looking back. There's a lot of emotion that you can convey in just the direction and the compositional elements. Here's another Sargent painting. The painting's about Mrs. Isaac Newton Phelps Stokes. Her name was Edith. We take a look at this painting, and clearly the painting was a portrait about her. It wasn't about a happy marriage. It wasn't about a couple. It was about her. Okay? The fact of the matter is, that's her husband standing back there, and he's taking place of the dog. The dog wouldn't stand still. It was going to be a painting of her and her dog. The dog wouldn't stand still, and so the husband stood in. Okay? Sargent often did this. It got him in trouble in some social situations with Madame X, but at the same time, it comes down to, and this is where I like to bring up the fact that we are in control of managing how the viewer looks at and feels about the image and the elements in the image. It's about our image message. What do we want to say? Clearly in this, he didn't want to make it, he didn't want you to focus on the rendering of the painting as much as she's important and him not so much. Okay? And so he kind of set him up as kind of a background element in there. And we can see this in a number of his portraits, particularly his casual portraits, the portraits he did for friends and other artists or artist families. Those are the ones that really challenge the viewer compositionally. Those are the ones that really, I think Sargent really went out on a limb and was really pushing some boundaries, making some visual statements with his compositions by, in this case, what's dominant, what's subordinate. Here's another image, and this is a birthday party, and this was of his friend and his family, Albert Besnard and his wife. Albert was a painter. His wife was a sculptor, okay? And clearly, I mean, if you look at this image, she kind of runs the household because she's dominating this image, right? It's the area of the greater contrast. It's the little boy's birthday, but it's all about her, okay? It's really all about her. Now, Sargent has done this on a number of occasions. One of the other images you guys have done before, he'll crowd the lower corner with stuff, okay? He pushes them down in the corner and he crowds the corner with stuff. He puts the picture right on the edge of the frame. There's a lot of things there that people would say, no, and don't ever do. But he does these things because what he's doing is he made her so dominant in there and surrounded by that heavy black. What he's doing is he's giving you other distractions. Okay? He's softening the blow of that, the hardness of that, by giving you a little bit of chaos in another area or patterning of these small contrasting marks. But you can see the perspective in the room allows this dark border above the man's head to actually come down and help frame the situation. And then the fabric or curtains on the left come down along the left side and bring your eye down there, and then the table will bring you back in towards her back, and then the subtle values on the ground and stuff will just push that back into the distance. Where the higher contrast is clearly between the woman and cutting the cake, the little boy, and the back edge of the lamp is pointing back up at the father up there. So these two discussed the idea of storytelling in your image. Besnard's feeling, he had a strong compulsion about, a painting needed to tell a story and it needed to have some kind of a story behind it. And that really rubbed off on Sargent.